right, welcome in everybody. It is episode 5. After a little bit of a hiatus, couldn't get the scheduling down. Something always came up, but we're back in episode 5. We were gonna do wide receiver rankings, but everyone probably has their own rankings by now, so it's kind of old news. So we're gonna get into more of the fun stuff. As some of you know, me and Jeremy live together, and we are both positive for COVID right now. Jake is lucky and has never had it. We're both doing fine as Jeremy's drinking a beer. But how you guys doing?
Medicine.
Jeremy, how have you been feeling the past couple days?
Last few days I've just been napping, staying in bed. Today I tried to go on a run to see what I felt like. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty good right now. Best I felt all day or all week, honestly.
Awesome. Jake, how about you?
I'm good. I played basketball yesterday, so hopefully that didn't, luckily I try to keep my distance on defense and, so it's pretty easy to stay away from people. But actually my mom has it right now. I know it's everywhere. My dad's just getting over it. They're hour and a half away, so I haven't seen them. So luckily I haven't had it yet, but we'll see. I'm knock on wood because I feel like mentioning this on a podcast, I'm going to get it tomorrow. So.
I like what you said about staying away on defense. I always did that because people could just run right by me, but that's a different story. All right, well, we'll just hop right into it. A lot of preseason news today. My personal favorite preseason news. Jeremy probably feels a little bit different, but my Philadelphia Eagles have finally gotten rid of a man who cannot play football at all. Jalen Reagor was traded to the Vikings for a 7th-round pick and a conditional 4th-round pick, which will turn into a 5th-round pick because he's not going to meet whatever stat requirements there are for it to be a 4th-rounder. So it's a 7th and a 5th-rounder to the Eagles for Jalen Trash Reagor. What do you guys think about this? Jeremy, as a Vikings fan, what are you feeling right now?
I think it's hilarious. The first thing I saw, I just laughed. It was hilarious because now Reagor and Jefferson they probably won't play together. They can practice together. I just think it's hilarious. I don't mind it. We overpaid a little bit, but 5th and a 7th, it's whatever. I like it.
There you go. Yeah. Awesome. He's never going to field for you, and if he's your punt returner, he's going to fumble it at least 2 times.
All right, I can't wait.
Yeah. Jake, what do you think about this?
He has potential to maybe be their number 3 if he can beat out KJ Osborne. I don't know if he can do that. One thing I did enjoy about this pickup by the Vikings is that it gave the Twitter the excuse to put out that video of the Vikings front office right after the Eagles selected Reagor. And I'm rooting for the guy. I hope, obviously, we want him to be fantasy relevant, but what can you say about Howie Roseman? I'll say that he's probably the best GM in the NFL. I think the way he's built this team, the way he just stacks up picks, the value he got on was it Gardner Johnson from the Saints. It's he's great. He's great at his job.
He is. I've been saying it for a while. The Eagles fans
can't draft wide receivers. He can't draft wide receivers.
He cannot draft. He can't.
But
period.
Best trader in the league. Maybe I should qualify him a little bit. Maybe not best GM, but best drafter, but best definitely one of the best in terms of getting value in trades.
For sure, I agree. He's great with the cap. He's great with trades. He just makes the moves, and he's one of the most winning GMs in the past 10 years. You can't argue with his resume so far. Other surprising news: there's a lot of cuts that happened in the NFL today. I think. Does anyone know when the official date to get down to 53 is?
I think it was yesterday.
Was it yesterday? Okay, all right.
Yeah, 4 o'clock yesterday.
Yeah, so the 53-man rosters are set. Still moves to come with players getting released and traded through waivers and stuff. But initial NFL cuts, there were a lot of surprising ones. Jeremy, what was the most surprising cut for you, and how does it affect anything in fantasy, if it does at all?
I'll tell you, this affects nothing in fantasy because he was never fantasy relevant. But Trey Sermon, I thought he was going to be so good last year. And even now, I heard some good news out of it. Good news from him out of camp. I thought he'd make the team, but I think it's better for him if he gets cut in the long term.
Yeah, for sure. I was huge Trey Sermon believer, as we were talking about earlier. Jake, what was the most surprising cut for you, and what are its effects on fantasy?
Yeah, there are a couple deep sleepers of mine that I took the L on, and one of them was Sony Michel. I thought maybe he could take over. He's the biggest back in that backfield when he was there in Miami. I thought maybe he could take that goal line role that was really valuable in San Francisco, and make McDaniel going over to the Dolphins. It would make sense that maybe he would be that guy to score touchdowns for the Dolphins. But now he's on the Chargers, it looks like, and who knows? He looks like he might be the handcuff for Austin Eckler. So still holding out hope for him.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think this affects Isaiah Spiller, or do you think
Spiller's still injured. I know he's practiced a little bit, but I think it's questionable for if he's going to be available week 1. So redraft, I'd rather have Michel. I'm holding on to Spiller in Dynasty, obviously, if you drafted him. But anyone who I was in a Dynasty draft where he went in the mid first round, and you just don't do that with day 3 running backs. Even with Dameon Pierce, it might have worked out for you. If you're drafting now, you might be taking him right around there. But day 3 running backs in the first round in a Dynasty draft it's a dangerous game.
Yeah, for sure. My most surprising cut is a deep cut to my heart, as I am used to go to University of Missouri. This guy is electric, all SEC, second team last year, 6th round pick to the Ravens. Running back Tyler Beatty got cut. He did get signed back with the practice squad, but it really just surprises me with Dobbins most likely going to miss week 1 and week 2. And Gus Edwards already out for week 1, I think. And they bring in Mike Davis. They have Justice Hill there. And then they bring in Kenyon Drake. And I would have guaranteed that Tyler Beatty is better than all 3 of those running backs that they brought in. Mike Davis is a shell of his former self. Kenyon Drake couldn't beat out Amir Abdullah. And Tyler Beatty, so electric and young. It really just surprised me. So that one really hurt. I still think he has a shot because I think he's extremely talented and a great pass catcher. But yeah. That one hurts.
With Tyler Beatty, I actually I was on Twitter in an argument discussion with Heath Cummings from CBS about whether Justice Hill would outscore Tyler Beatty. I said, if that happens, I'm going to print this tweet out and eat it. So I hope. I don't know did Justice Hill end up making the roster, but
I'm not sure.
I'm holding out hope that maybe in 2021 or 2022 at least he'll outscore Justice Hill, so I don't have to eat any paper, eat my words.
Oh, that's great. And if you eat paper, that might get you sick, just like me and Jeremy. Speaking of,
you got COVID.
Yeah, that is how you get COVID. Oh man, this is gonna get flagged and taken down.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Speaking of being sick, the main things we're gonna do today, we're gonna go over players that make us sick at their current average draft position, and then players that will get you paid at their average draft position. So we're gonna start out with players that will make us sick. Jeremy, since you are sick right now drinking your Michelob Ultra, what is one player at their current average draft position that you are not touching?
I feel like it's actually a pretty common answer, but DK Metcalf goes near the end of the 4th round. He was barely a top 20 receiver last year, and now with the unbelievable QB downgrade from Russell Wilson to Geno Smith and Drew Lock, they'll both be benched for each other. I see no consistency. That can also include Tyler Lockett as I'm at it. But yeah, I see no consistency with that team, especially the passing offense. And I would just not be touching him, and I would not be confident if he was in my starting lineup.
Yeah, as they did announce that Geno Smith did win the starting job. Yeah. I was hoping it would be Drew Lock. Maybe give them some upside. You already know what you have with Geno Smith. But the numbers don't lie. I mean, DK Metcalf was pretty productive with Geno Smith at quarterback last season when he was there. What do you think about DK Metcalf this season, Jake?
Well, I actually am happier about Geno Smith being the quarterback. I have more confidence in him, but I think maybe that's the former Missouri Tiger India that's
Oh yeah.
saying that about Drew Lock. But I mean, he does take more shots downfield probably, but DK Metcalf, just the athleticism and the talent is there, and I'm always hesitant to fade that. And where he's at in ADP, I don't feel too bad. I don't end up usually getting him because there are other wide receivers I like better. But I mean, I think it's kind of reflected in the ADP. If you look at where he was going last year versus this year, that he's going to have a down year, and it's easy to fade anybody on the Seahawks really. Tyler Lockett might be the most appealing at his ADP because he might get traded. That's really his upside,
Yeah, for sure. I also agree. I'm a little hesitant on DK Metcalf. I like, for fantasy purposes, I like Geno Smith starting. I still think DK Metcalf. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a value in fantasy. I don't think he'll be a wide receiver one like he was with Russell Wilson at quarterback, but I think he could be a solid wide receiver too. I wouldn't be surprised at that. But just the guys going around him at that spot, like maybe a DJ Moore falls at that spot, or I'd rather a Mike Williams. But at that point, I'm mostly going running backs, like Breece Hall is right there. I'd rather have Breece Hall over Metcalf right now. Jake, what's one that's making you sick at the average?
My first guy is I'm going to start high and go down. I got my first rounder is going to be Najee Harris. And, he had a great rookie season, really impressive. But you look at, they've talked about the Lisfranc injury that he has. It's supposed to be not a concern. He's supposed to be ready for week 1. But, there's always that chance. You don't want to hear about, hey, this guy's dealing with this injury right before the season. That's never good news. You look at the Pittsburgh offense, they have a lot of questions. Offensive line is one of the worst in the league, according to PFF's rankings, their preseason rankings that they have out. He had less than 4 yards per carry last season. That's really bad. I think he's probably going to regress as a pass catcher. If you look at these new quarterbacks that they have, Trubisky and Pickett, they both have the athleticism that, Big Ben, especially old, dusty Big Ben could only dream of. So they're going to be probably taking off more likely than dumping off for Najee. So I think the receptions come down. Then the other thing is he's just not he's not an explosive player. He doesn't make big plays. He's just not fast is the thing. And he's a really good running back. I'm not saying, he's not talented, but he's more of that Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery mold in terms of speed, right? He didn't run the 40 for a reason. And you look at, he did not have a single play over 40 yards last season. If you even look to his college days, his longest run at Alabama was 42 yards. So he's just not going to have those high impact. He doesn't have the straight line speed to have those high impact, high scoring plays and for fantasy. And that's another reason that I'm fading him. He's going around 7 right now. I take him in the second. I got him actually at 17 in a best ball draft. It was like right after the injury got announced, and I was in a tournament for underdog, a $3 tournament. And I said, yeah, Najee at 17, I'll take him. Sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Najee is interesting. In the beginning of the beginning of draft season, I was all in on Najee. But now I'm my first draft, I took Najee at 7, and I'm having a little bit of regret about it. I think I'd rather have Dalvin Cook at 7 right now than Najee. But, I mean, like you said, Najee just doesn't have that breakaway speed. He's not gonna give you that long 60-yard run. He's just gonna wear on the defense with 20, 22 carries a game, and he'll get his 3.5, 4 yards a carry, and it'll be slow. But I mean, volume is king. So I do still like Najee as like a back end of the first, early second round running back. But I agree with you, Jake. I'm not super sold at where he's going right now. Jeremy, what do you think about Najee Harris so far this year?
I'll be quick on him. I still have him as a top 8, top 9 guy. If I can get him in there, I'll be happy. You get a secure RB1 who gets at least 20 touches a game, bare minimum.
It's definitely a volume play for Najee Harris, and I would say a lot of these arguments I'm making you could make for Derrick Henry, except for that he does have those explosive plays that he can score you 10 points like that, where Najee just doesn't have that in his game.
Yeah, for sure. If I'm taking Najee in the first round, I'm swinging for upside in the second round, second and third. My first player that makes me sick, who was it? Who did I have? I had Nick Chubb from the Cleveland Browns. He's going around 15th overall, so middle of the second, early mid to second round. I'm not sold on Nick Chubb in fantasy. He still has Kareem Hunt there, and as long as Kareem Hunt is there, he's never going to be a top 5 running back. He's a great NFL player. He's fantastic, maybe one of the best running backs in football. But for fantasy purposes, Kareem Hunt is there, and it's always going to be a pain in the side for Nick Chubb owners. He doesn't really get the receptions. That's all Nick Chubb and Dearness Johnson, who they brought back. Not having Deshaun Watson there for the first 11 games, that's definitely going to hurt, as I think they'll load the box and try and make Jacoby Brissett beat them. So I think for Nick Chubb to get to pay out of where you're drafting him, I feel like it would be extremely difficult, and he would have to start catching passes, which he has a path to do that. If Kareem Hunt does get traded, then I think Nick Chubb could be an extreme value, but I just don't see them trading him, especially since they don't have a quarterback for the first 11 weeks. What do you guys think about Nick Chubb this year?
So we already talked about Nick Chubb a little bit when we went through our running back rankings, and I recommend listening to that if you haven't already. But as far as I remember, we kind of all agreed on it. I think Nick Chubb's one of the best pure running backs in the league, but for fantasy and with the quarterback situation and just everything going on in Cleveland, I agree. I don't touch him. In my draft so far, I have not drafted him, and I have 3 in the next few days, and I'm not going to draft him either.
Jake, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to be the contrarian here. I kind of like Nick Chubb at his value, where he's going. I don't mind taking him there. One thing is we talked about with Najee, it's a volume play, and Kareem Hunt's there, but honestly, that he could be traded, and that can kind of help him stay fresh longer. And if Kareem Hunt's there and he's the pass catching back, and they don't have a quarterback, first 12 weeks, because I think they have a bye in there. So you think about 12 weeks of the NFL season, it's going to be Nick Chubb. It's going to be the Nick Chubb show. And then what's going to happen after week 12 when Deshaun Watson finally arrives on the field in Cleveland? You're going to have probably a very good offense. It's a very good offensive line already. So you have high potential for touchdowns in those peak weeks for the fantasy season when you're going to be playing in your tournaments. So that to me is exciting. I'm not going ahead of ADP for Chubb, but a lot of times because of those reasons that you pointed out, he's falling. And if he's falling, late second, I will take him every time.
Yeah, for sure. Players around Chubb's ADP that I'd rather have over. I'd rather have a Deebo Samuel. I'd rather have an Alvin Kamara. I'd rather have CeeDee Lamb. I'd even be willing to say I'm not even a huge fan on this guy, but I think I'm warming up to him. I think I'd rather have Saquon Barkley over Nick Chubb at this point, which is crazy for me to say, as I am not a Saquon believer. But Jeremy, who is your second player that makes you sick right now?
Deontay Johnson. We're talking a little bit with Najee, just like the change in the offense. He got so many targets last year because Ben couldn't throw deep. Deontay's a lot short guy. And I don't dislike him. Just I like some of the other receivers and mainly the running backs around there, where I'd rather stack up on the running backs over Deontay. Just personally, never been a huge Deontay guy, but I'll see how the offense goes. Don't know if Pickett will play this year. Just don't know what's going to go on, and I'm just going to stay away if I don't know how the offense is going to play.
Yeah, for sure. Jake, what are your thoughts on Deontay?
Yeah, I think he's one of my lowest exposure players. I don't have a lot of Deontay Johnson. kind of with you, Coop. I've never been a Deontay Johnson guy. Obviously, really bad case of the drops early on in his career. He's cleaned that up. But I don't like him where he's going. There's other players I'd prefer. And we talked about the questions of that offense, and they just drafted another wide receiver, George Pickens, who's been the star of the preseason for him. His blocking highlights, go check him out. But yeah, I agree with Coop there. I'm fine with fading Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, fair. I understand where you guys are coming from. I'm on the other side. I have Deontay in one league. I don't mind him where he's going. He's kind of just become, in my opinion, I view him as like a little bit younger and tiny bit less productive Keenan Allen. He's just safe and reliable for fantasy purposes. He may not get you 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. He may not get you those multi-touchdown weeks, but he's going to go out there and get you 6 to 7 catches for 60, 70, maybe even 100 yards, and maybe he'll catch a touchdown. But he's just reliable as that dink and dunk safety blanket for Big Ben last year. But now with Trubisky, I feel like they'll simple it down for him and just make those little dump offs in the slot to Deontay, and especially if what's his name, Kenny Pickett were to come in and start at any point, I feel like that would even boost Deontay's value even more, because as all rookie quarterbacks love having a safety blanket, and if he can find Deontay as that safety guy, I think he's well on his way to have another 100+ reception season. And I think he's just safe. I understand having other guys around him. Like he's going right now at the early 4th, late 3rd at 37th overall. Some of the running backs, I'd rather have ETN over him. I'd rather have DJ Moore. But then that's about it. David Montgomery were to fall, Michael Pittman. I'd rather those guys. But Deontay, I don't mind Deontay where he's going. I feel like he's just very safe. I think I'd rather have him as my wide receiver 2. I'd be a little worried if he's my wide receiver 1. But I feel like he's kind of safe this year, and I don't mind him for where he's going. Jake, who is your second player that makes you feel sick?
Okay, and remember saying sick at their ADP, and that's really the argument for this one. It's not the player, because I think he's a great player, but it's Josh Allen. Can't get on board with taking a quarterback in the second round in any kind of one quarterback league. I don't care who it is. And again, just where he's going. And even in the 3rd round, I won't take him. I got him in the 4th round of a best ball draft the other day, and it was nice because I had Diggs already, and I was like, okay, I'm going to take him. It's 4th round. This is value, and that's where I would take him. You're not going to get him there in most leagues, in most home leagues, and I know he's been the number 1 quarterback 2 years in a row, but there's no guarantee that he three-peats. I think it's probably more likely than not that he doesn't. And it's just if you look at him being quarterback 1 the past 2 seasons, it hasn't been a difference maker in the way that Lamar Jackson was in 2019. Obviously, you're getting him a lot later because that's when he broke out. But his difference in points per game is something. It was like over 6 points, where Josh Allen's been floating around 1 or 2 points over the next guy, and or even 2 or 3 points. Even there's 10 guys in the past couple of years that have all been 20+ points per game at quarterback. And if Josh Allen is sitting there even at 24, 25 points per game, if you look at just the value where those guys are going. So if you want to wait, if you still want kind of an early quarterback, you can get Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, 50 picks later or more. You want to wait really long, 100 picks after Josh Allen is gone, you can still get Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, Tua. So really, it's just a bet on, hey, Josh Allen probably isn't going to be the quarterback 1 again. And even if he is, the quarterback 1 this season probably isn't worth that second-round pick unless you see a guy like Lamar go crazy. I don't think Josh Allen has 1,000-yard rushing season up his sleeve. So I'm fading him at pick 22. I think he's going right now. Late 2nd, no. Late 3rd, no. 4th round, then take him.
Yes, I completely agree, and I think we really hit on it in our quarterback rankings show. It's the quarterback position is so deep this year, where you can literally wait, like you said, almost 100 picks later and get Kirk Cousins, who may score 3 points per game less or 4 points per game less than Josh Allen. Get yourself another stud running back or receiver, or even an early tight end. But I agree. I don't think one thing that made Josh Allen so great in fantasy. I still think he'll be great. I mean, he's unanimously our QB1 off the board this year. I'd rather have him than anyone else. But I don't think he'll be running the ball, like you said, as much. They go out and get James Cook on day 2 draft capital. They still have Singletary, and there's everything coming out of camp. Is Zach Moss is having a great camp and will definitely have a role. So it looks like they're going to go running back by committee. And I think they are trying to get more involvement out of the run game and less from Josh Allen, more from the running backs. I feel like that just makes sense for NFL purposes. Even though Josh Allen is a great big running back like a Cam Newton, but you just don't want your star quarterback getting hurt, because if you run a read option in the third quarter of a meaningless game that you're already up 14 points, and then he rolls his ankle and he's not the same for the rest of the year, you just hurt your Super Bowl chances. You cut him in half essentially right there if he's not healthy. So I think, and that'll definitely hurt his fantasy value. I think he will throw more. I wouldn't be surprised if he leads the league in touchdowns and wins MVP this year. I would not be surprised, but at his current ADP, I'm avoiding, and I'll take later quarterbacks like a Trey Lance, like a Kirk Cousins, or Matthew Stafford. Jeremy, what are your thoughts on Josh Allen this year?
Yeah, I feel like almost everyone who knows fantasy football thinks the same way. I'm not touching Josh Allen unless it's the 5th round. I don't like drafting quarterbacks. I've taken Trey Lance in like the 10th and 11th rounds, and I just love that. Like, it just makes no sense taking a quarterback that early when he gets drafted. He has a higher ADP than Leonard Fournette, Mike Evans. Like, that just makes no sense to me. Higher than Keenan Allen, Michael Pittman. There's so many guys you can help bolster your roster. But if you can get a quarterback midway, even in the latter half of the draft, who can still be an every week starter, no problem.
Yeah. I do see this trend recently in a lot of money leagues that I've been in this year. I've drafted 7 teams already, and I know I'm addicted. I have 1 more this Sunday, or 2 more this weekend. I've noticed in the higher money leagues, I've noticed quarterbacks are falling 3 to 4 rounds past their ADP. And it's because I think people know to pass on the quarterback and how deep it is. And it is, have you guys noticed this? And are you guys tempted to just click on it? Because it's not usually where they go, but you got to adjust, because if Josh Allen's there in the 4th or 5th round even, that means you could still get like a Jalen Hurts in round 9 or 10 and a Kirk Cousins in maybe the last pick of your draft type of thing. Have you guys noticed that? And is that tempting to you to take a quarterback earlier?
Yeah, I've noticed that, and it just tempts me to wait. If everyone else wait, like, I don't know. I don't like drafting quarterbacks in a 1 quarterback league. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'll live on that. Like, there's so many quarterbacks. There's probably 20 quarterbacks that you can play and be fairly confident that they'll get you 18, 20 points, and that's fine.
Jake, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, you're right. The sharper the league, it seems like the later they'll go. This is funny. If you do any of these best ball drafts on Underdog, you'll see their ADP versus the Fantasy Pros ADP, which pulls from ESPN, Yahoo, all the fantasy sites. The difference between them, because I think Josh Allen is a 3rd round pick in most best ball drafts, or late 3rd even. But yeah, I do notice that. But then you get into August, you get close to the season, you're doing all these home league drafts, and you've got 3 quarterbacks off the board, and it's the 4th round. It happens a lot. They are going later, and when that happens, you do have to react a little bit and say, because then you also have people that will take 2 quarterbacks, that real early too. They'll take 2 of the top 12 quarterbacks, and maybe that's lighting a pick on fire. But you have to realize as a player looking out for your team, hey, I gotta sneak in here, even if it's, you gotta pay attention. How many quarterbacks? Where's that line? What's the backstop? For me, it's Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, that tier. If I feel like I can get one of those guys, I'm fine. Hope I find the right one that breaks out, and even if not, I'm fine with streaming.
Yeah, for sure. My second player that makes me sick at their ADP is a guy I've never been that high on, and he's going a pick later than Jeremy's guy, Deontay Johnson. Mine is Washington Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin. I think he's just almost the same thing as Nick Chubb. I think he's an amazing talent, amazing wide receiver. If you get him on the right team, at the right system, with the right quarterback, I think he'd light the world on fire. I don't think his issue has been he's never had a reliable quarterback, never had an accurate quarterback. And you say he gets an upgrade in Wentz this year, but Wentz still is a bottom half quarterback inaccurate when it comes to accuracy. I think McLaurin will be a little bit more consistent, but I just don't think Wentz is that big enough of an upgrade to support early round 4, late round 3 draft capital for McLaurin. Jeremy, what do you think about Terry McLaurin this year?
I don't mind Terry McLaurin. If he falls a little bit, I don't mind taking him whatsoever, but I'm not taking him quite at his ADP. I do think Carson Wentz definitely could be upgrade. He made Michael Pittman a top 20 receiver, and that's with him not playing so well early on in the season. As you transfer it to Washington now, McLaurin the clear-cut wide receiver 1. It might take a few weeks. And who knows how it's going to work out, but I think he'll be decent. Like, he'll be kind of dependable. Like, if he's your wide receiver 2, probably I want him as a flex, but the problem is you don't know if you'll be able to draft him there. He'll be dependable. I like him. Don't love him. But if he falls around below his ADP, that's probably where I'd take him.
Jake, what are your thoughts on McLaurin?
I like him. I like him at cost. I've been drafting him in the 4th round. Fine with it. I do think it's a quarterback upgrade. Yeah, we could spend a whole hour and a half talking about how bad Carson Wentz is, but still, he's got the tools that Taylor Heineke just doesn't have. And you see the kind of plays that McLaurin can make downfield. If he takes some of those shots downfield and converts, then he's going to have a nice season. I think he's pretty solid bet to have another 1,000-yard season, and that's going to be valuable. He's going to be a starter, so I don't mind him where he's at. And it's the Washington offense isn't going to be great probably, but still he's guaranteed production. He's going to be the number 1 receiver there. Even with Jahan Dotson, who I do like, the new rookie in Washington, I think he's still going to be ahead above everybody else in terms of targets on that team.
Are you guys worried at all? Because the thing that I don't like about McLaurin, like I said, he's a great talent, and it's a QB upgrade. He still has those weeks where he just disappears, and it won't even be 1 week. It may be 2 weeks or 3 weeks where he just gets under 10 points and kind of kills you having him as your wide receiver too. But then he can explode at any given point. Do you think there will be a little bit more stability there with Wentz, or do you think it'll be more of the same, maybe a little bit more upside, a little more boom games?
They should throw for more yards, so it's hard to believe that he wouldn't upgrade. He might still have those weeks, but I would depend on him a little more compared to last year, but nothing too crazy. I think he was like 24, 25 receiver. I could see him in the range 19, 20.
Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he will be pretty dependable week to week, just because how good is Washington going to be, and then how good is their defense? It's funny because that defense on paper, all the draft picks up front, our first round draft picks on that defensive line, we don't know yet. Chase Young, obviously, he might be out, but early on. But I still think if that defense is bad enough, that they're going to have to throw. And who's going to be the downfield target? It's going to be McLaurin, and he's got that sub 4.4 speed. He is like a really fast, good player. He had one of the best catches of the year last season.
Yeah.
So I like him. Again, I think he's going to be dependable. I think he'll probably I don't know how much ceiling he has with that offense. He's going as wide receiver 17 right now. I think right around there. I think Yeah, I think he could probably get up to like maybe 13. I'm not sure if he has that wide receiver 1 upside, but you never know. If scores a few long touchdowns, it could happen.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. The upside is definitely there for McLaurin. I'm just gonna stay away. Um, our third and final round of the players that make us sick. Jeremy, who's your third player that makes you sick at their average draft position?
See, my third guy was AJ Brown. I feel like that's kind of an uncommon answer. I don't know. When I first saw the rankings, so my first initial ranking, my thought was, oh yeah, I'm not drafting AJ Brown. And I thought that a lot of people would say that, but I haven't seen too much about it. You know, they're a run first offense. You know, they got 3 backs who can all carry the ball. They have Jalen Hurts who's going to run the ball 10 times. You got Dallas Goedert. You know, he's going to be the wide receiver 1 with Devonta Smith. I think will play a pretty big role this year. AJ Brown goes like mid third. Just not a big fan of him. I'd rather have Michael Pittman over him. That's who I'd rather have. He falls a little bit below AJ Brown, and I've taken him over AJ Brown in the real drafts. And just, I don't love the offense. I don't love the situation he's in. I like the player, but I wouldn't take him unless it's like mid fourth.
Jake, what do you think about AJ Brown?
Yeah, again, he's another guy that I'll take at his value. Yeah, I'm seeing he's wide receiver 13 right now, going 29th in Fantasy Pros PPR. And I don't mind him there just because I really like the upside. It depends on the build, I guess, and how averse you are to risk, because I think AJ Brown is kind of a risky pick. And I understand fading him because of that with the run first offense, as you said. But if he and Hurts have this connection, which according to their social media posts, they do have this connection, right? You see them, then he's going to be the lead target. And if Hurts takes that step as a passer, then he's one of the best wide receivers when he's on the field in the game. Question is, he also has the injury problems. It seems to always have these lower body injuries, and that's a concern with him as well. So I understand fading him, but if he falls, then I'm fine taking him too. And I think he does have really, really nice upside. He's being drafted as a wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 2. And, it would not be shocking if he finishes top 3 this season, I don't think,
Yeah, for sure. I'm a little indifferent about AJ Brown this season. I'm gonna leave out my Eagles bias, but there's a lot of red flags when it comes to AJ Brown and where he's going right now. One is that they got a lot of weapons. It's a lot different than previous years in Philly. They have a lot of weapons in the passing game. What they have Devonta Smith, who I have already said I think is better than AJ Brown already. And then they have Dallas Goedert at tight end also. And they have a bunch of good pass catching running backs like Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell. Miles Sanders is a little bit more of just a down the hill runner, but they also have Quez Watkins, who will take the top off the defense. I think he's a great undervalued NFL player that'll steal some touchdowns from Brown. And historically, the Eagles have never had a fantasy alpha number 1 wide receiver. They tend to spread the ball around more. And yes, they've had different systems and different coaches, but they all stem back to the Andy Reid system as Andy Reid, then the Doug Peterson system. They ran the exact same system. Nick Sirianni, Frank Reich, the same system. So I don't think the system shows any bias towards one guy. But then again, the Eagles have never really had an alpha receiver like an A.J. Brown. The last time there was one was, I don't think Alshon Jeffrey was really on his level, but maybe Alshon Jeffrey. And then T.O. before that. So there is upside with A.J. Brown. I think the connection is undeniable with Jalen Hurts. But you also got to think all the reports coming out that there's huge connection there. That was also happening when Devonta Smith wasn't practicing for a week and a half. So Devonta Smith wasn't out there. We haven't really seen the offense with Smith and Brown and Goddard and the entire offense out there. So I am curious to see it. I think he'll be a very solid receiver in fantasy. I think he'd be a nice wide receiver too with upside. but I'm kind of fading him. I'll take him a round later if he falls, but where he's going, there's other guys I think I'd rather have. Like I think I'd rather have Michael Pittman. I have him more in the Deontay Johnson range, like early round 4 area.
Jalen Reagor just got traded. That's 57 targets vacated. So
there is 57.
He had 57 targets.
He was our wide receiver 2. He was our wide receiver 3, I should say. Quez Watkins was so much better. Greg Ward is even better.
You got to mention Travis Fulgham in your different Eagles alphas.
Yeah, he was.
Or JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
I don't even know who's Arcega-Whiteside or
also surprising cut.
Is a tight end now. He's a tight end, not a receiver. He's a tight end. Jake, who is the third player that makes you sick at their ADP?
So we're moving to round 3, and we're going to go with James Conner. Conner, I think, really, he won a lot of leagues last season with the year he had, but I don't like counting on that kind of touchdown production year over year. It's a very similar case to Najee Harris, actually. He's going later than Harris, obviously, but he just doesn't have that big playability like we talked about. He actually had fewer 20-yard gains than Harris did. Conner only had 8 last season. Harris had 9, and he averaged fewer yards per carry too. It was 3.7 yards per carry, so under 4. Again, not good numbers. And a lot of what he did in the passing game came without Chase Edmonds. And Chase Edmonds moved on to Miami. We'll talk about him later, but with Conner, you see, Benjamin is still there, and he's been one of those guys you're hearing a lot of buzz about in the offseason. So I don't know that we can count on that pass catching again. I don't know that we can count on the touchdowns again. He scored 18 last season. That was most of his career, and I don't like counting on that again. And with the bad offensive line, the Arizona Cardinals also ranked in the bottom 10, I think, by PFF. And probably closer to 10 touchdowns this season. Maybe doesn't get quite the yardage that he did. So I'm fading him at cost. 3rd round, too rich for me. I'd rather have Etienne, honestly, and I know he's going quite a bit further back, and I think about Breece Hall over him. I know, that's closer for me. I think I'd probably go Conner, but that's what we're talking about in terms of where I'd take him.
Yeah, for sure. I like what you're saying, and I am kind of fading James Conner a little bit. I've seen him, and I was thinking about picking him in a couple leagues, but then I just opted not to because of what you said. Benjamin is there, and I think Benjamin will have that Chase Edmonds role, and we really saw Conner elevate his fantasy game once Edmonds got hurt and was out, and he was the only guy there. So he was great because he was the only one there. And now they have Benjamin. I think he'll eat into the targets. He'll be the 3rd down guy. I think it's just touchdown or bust for James Conner this season. Jeremy, what do you think about James Conner? I'm
like slightly below where he gets drafted. I wouldn't say I'm sick of him. I like James Conner. He's about ADP 30. And I feel like in a 12-man league, he's often taken in that back end of the 3rd round, that mid to back. And, I drafted that 11, that 12 spot. And if he falls me at that end of the 3rd round, and maybe I haven't taken a running back yet, or maybe I have, regardless, I would like to take him. It depends who's there, obviously, a little bit. But that's kind of a little bit of a dead zone for me personally. And I would like James Conner. I've never been a huge fan of him, but, he's got a decent opportunity. And if he can just stay healthy, he should be able to outdo his ADP.
Zeke or James Conner?
James Conner.
I'm taking Zeke.
All right, I'd go Zeke too. He's going right behind him. What about Etienne? You got Conner over Etienne?
I think I'm taking Etienne.
I love Etienne.
All right. Good to hear.
I think it depends what pick I would have because I may play the ADP game and hopefully Etienne would fall. But I think that's trying to get a little too cute. If you know a guy is going to be, if you think a guy's going to be better, like we all think Etienne's going to be great, and we're not sure about Conner, I feel like you just got to go with your gut and take ETN there because it could come back and bite you in the ass if you don't.
You can't wait for ETN anymore. It's
Connor
third
goes
round. You got to go third round or you're not getting them.
Yeah. The ETN train has left the station months ago. So the Damian Pierce train is almost catching up to ETN. It was late, but now it's full steam ahead for Damian Pierce right now.
And my
Damian Pierce or James Conner?
I'm still taking James Conner. I'm taking James Conner.
Okay.
Yeah.
James Conner.
Are you taking James Conner or are you taking Damian Pierce?
Oh, Damian Pierce, he's a second round pick for me, I think. Yeah. No. Please don't draft Damian Pierce over James Conner or over any of these names that we've said so far.
Not taking. Oh, we lost Jeremy. Not taking Damian Pierce over Breece Hall.
No. That's a conversation I've heard on Twitter today, and ridiculous to me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I see it on Twitter, but I don't see the people saying Pierce over Hall. I just
get me in these leagues,
Yeah, for real. All I see is if you're taking Pierce over Hall, you don't know anything. But I've never seen anyone say it. But I've seen people say that you're dumb if you say it. So it is what it is. Well, hopefully we get Jeremy back in here. But in the meantime, I will go over my third player that I'm sick of at their ADP, and that is Amari Cooper for the Cleveland Browns. So 2 Cleveland Browns players in my sick players. He's going 64th overall, so that's in like round 6 right now. I think it's going down and down every day, but I'm a little worried with he's not going to have a quarterback for the first 11 weeks. So it'll be Jacoby Brissett throwing him the ball most likely. And I haven't looked at the stats of Brissett's and what receivers he's produced in fantasy, but I'm just not huge on Amari Cooper this year. I think maybe he's a trade deadline acquisition in fantasy. If you're gearing up for the fantasy playoffs, I feel like that'd be great as we get Jeremy back in here. But Amari Cooper, yeah, you're good. I don't like Amari Cooper for where he's going. I'd rather get just about anybody else at his spot. I mean, Jerry Judy's going to pick before him. Smash that pick over Cooper. Allen Robinson is going to pick later. Taking that. Not even an A.J. Dillon guy. I'm taking that. Gabe Davis, I'm taking that all day, every day over Amari Cooper. I don't see it, and he's not going to get you to the playoffs if you draft him there, I don't think. What do you guys think about Amari Cooper this year?
I'll be very short with it.
Go ahead.
I don't like Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
Is there any relation there?
Yeah, is he your brother?
No, cousin or?
Nope, he isn't.
Okay.
No, okay. I wish. I get some of that $100 million contract he got. But no, I don't. I hate that situation.
Just a fun fact. The Eagles got more for Jalen Reagor than the Cowboys got for Amari Cooper. Just going to put that out there.
That was the trade of the offseason. Honestly, the value they got when you see all the money that was thrown at wide receivers this offseason and like you mentioned, Reagor going for even that much. Chenault, I think, probably was in that same neighborhood at least for what the return was. And that, Cooper was the value of the offseason in terms of actual NFL value. But, Cooper, it's tough because I don't draft him either because there's a lot of guys I like. I actually got Chris Godwin after Cooper. I see Cooper's below him in ADP, but I remember seeing that and surprised that someone was taking Cooper over Godwin, even with the injury. But the one thing I will say, an argument for Cooper, is that Brissett is not a downfield thrower, and I don't think at this stage of his career, Amari Cooper is that downfield threat, and he's a really good route runner. He's going to be the top target on that team. You have to think that he's going to outperform Donovan Peoples-Jones or David Njoku, and then David Bell, the new wide receiver that they drafted. But you think Cooper's probably going to lead them in targets, and he's probably going to be. You saw Brissett with Waddle last year, just in that short intermediate area, and that's where Brissett likes to operate, and that's where Cooper is getting most of his receptions. So in that sense, in a PPR league, I think he's okay where he's being drafted. But I don't get a lot personally because there's a lot of guys behind him that I do prefer. At the same time, I think that Cooper he'll be good enough with Brissett, and then once Watson comes back in time for the fantasy playoffs, he could be real. He'll be probably outperforming his ADP by then at least.
Yes.
If not early in the season, maybe you have to live through some rough weeks early on. If you make it through and you are in the playoffs, he's probably in your starting lineup, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, Amari Cooper is one of the guys I'm not drafting. But if I'm in the playoff hunt or like locked up, if I'm one of those dominant teams that's like 9-0, 8-0, and I'm like fighting just going for the playoffs, he is one of those guys I'm going to actively try and go and get for my playoff hunt. When Deshaun Watson comes back, I think he's going to be a great flex play. He could even be like a weekly wide receiver too, maybe even one if Watson comes out and just has no rust whatsoever. So, yeah, I'm not drafting Cooper, but I would like to go get him later in the season if I'm locked and loaded for the playoffs. Well, those were all the players that made us sick at their ADP and all those nasty players. Now let's talk about players that are really good and are going to win you some championships. I know a lot of these guys are on our rosters, and we talk it and then we walk the walk by getting these guys. Jake, why don't you start us off? Who is one of your favorite players to draft at their ADP this season?
Okay, we were talking a lot about Chase Edmonds, and so let's go back to him. And all of my guys are going to be going. I try to make them fifth or later, I think, fifth round or later. But Chase Edmonds, he's going. Double check here, but I think he's going. Let's see. RB25 right now, 58 overall. So that's okay. Price, I actually really like him as my RB3. He's the a high end RB3 is what he's been drafted as, and I think he's going to outperform that. I think he's the clear lead in the backfield. If you look at the contract. I mentioned how Najee Harris didn't have many of these 40-plus yard plays. So Edmonds had 2 40-yard gains last season, and that was on 220 fewer touches than Harris. Harris didn't have a single one. Edmonds had 2, and he touched the ball, over 200 times less than Harris. So I think he's got that explosive speed. He was on pace for nearly 1,300 scrimmage yards last season if he hadn't gotten injured. He's averaged over 4 targets per game the past 2 seasons. And if we just imagine for a second what is this Dolphins offense is going to look like, they've got, assuming Jalen Waddle is healthy to go and ready to go, they've got 2 of the fastest wide receivers in the league on their team. Everyone's going to be playing 2 high safeties on them. That there's going to be a lot of clear running room for whoever's getting carries, whether it's Edmonds or Mostert, maybe Myles Gaskin. But we know Edmonds is probably going to lead this backfield in touches, so he's probably going to benefit the most. They also improved their offensive line with what they did in the offseason, making some good signings. And it's just great value. He's going to be the lead guy on what projects to be like a very good and exciting offense. I'm excited for him right there. I think he's probably going to end up being an RB2, maybe even a fringe RB1 in PPR leagues because of all the receptions. And again, high-powered offense. Hopefully, he's getting some good getting touchdowns there too. He could get the goal line work because he's the biggest guy left. Sony Michel got cut, and he's not going to take that work from him. He's the biggest guy left. He's not a huge back, but he's bigger than Mostert and Gaskin. So you got to think he's probably the lead guy.
Yeah, for sure. I really love Chase Edmonds this year. I have a league where I have I've stud running backs. I got Breece Hall in the 4th, and then David Montgomery fell to me in the 5th. But my favorite pick of the entire draft was getting Chase Edmonds in the 10th round. I feel like I love that pick, and I feel like that's maybe even a league-winning pick right there if he can stay healthy and can put up those numbers. And I really love him in this offense. And today yesterday, Sony Michel getting cut, that just solidifies it even more that he may even be better than what we thought. Because I was not giving him those goal line touches. Now, if he gets maybe 1 to 2 more touchdowns rushing wise from this Cuttings Michelle, that just adds to the more value. And I wouldn't be surprised if his ADP. I'm surprised his ADP hasn't risen. I'd be willing to take him in the 7th round, even a round earlier, to make sure I get him. I really love Chase Edmonds this year. Jeremy, what are your thoughts on Chase Edmonds?
I'm seeing him as ADP 90, so a little midway through the draft or so, a little before that. But I like Edmonds. I liked him a lot last year. He kind of disappointed, so I've eased off him a little bit, but it's probably a better situation now, just with how James Conner turned out. I like Edmonds. I think he'll do pretty well. Not as high on him as Jake is, but at his value, I think he's a pretty good pick. At one of the last true starters, I'd imagine that will still be out there.
Yeah, awesome. Jeremy,
real quick, I said he was at 58. He's at 79. I'm sorry, I had the wrong. Mm-hmm. I had ECR up instead of ADP. I was like, why is he this early? I thought he was like a 7th round pick. Okay, sorry.
You're good. You're good. Yeah, Jeremy, who is your first player that you love at their ADP?
So mine was pretty cut and clear. Mine's Allen Robinson. I still think Allen Robinson just has that dog in him. Robert Woods was the top 15 receiver when he was playing last year, and he'll pretty much just fill that role. It's a different offensive coordinator. We'll see how that works out. But I just think he's better than Robert Woods, and I just don't see him finishing outside the top 15 as a receiver.
Yeah. I'm a little worried. Well, I do like Robinson this year. There is the only worry I have is what happened last year in Chicago. Was it Matt Nagy? Was it Justin Fields? Or was it Allen Robinson? Because, Darnell Mooney was out there performing, and I think Allen Robinson's a better receiver, or at least I thought. I don't know anymore, but right now I'm just going to follow the money trail, and the Rams paid him a lot of money, so I'm in on Allen Robinson this year, and I believe that Stafford will get him back to producing like he's used to. Jake, what are your thoughts on Allen Robinson?
I don't have a lot of him, but I think he has as high a ceiling as anybody in that draft, in the range he's going. It's interesting because you talk about what he did that last year in Chicago, and just put some context into it. He got tagged, I think 2 years in a row, and he did not want to play out the tag. He wanted a new contract. You see how much money all these wide receivers are getting, and the Bears are taking some of his prime years away from him. So he's getting underpaid. I know this guy's getting paid millions of dollars to do this, but he's underpaid relative to his position and his talent. And he's injured, and the team is not good. The head coach seemed to have lost the locker room, and maybe that was part of it. So I try to just throw that year out. He performed with Blake Bortles. I know he's not the same athlete now, because he's also performed with Trubisky. He had some good seasons with Trubisky. So this is the best quarterback of his career. He is really good in the red zone. He's the one big target there. The one thing that we maybe worry about is Odell Beckham coming back late in the season and ruining some value. But I like him where he's going, and I think it's a good call by Coop.
Yeah, for sure. My first player that I love at their ADP, I went over this in the running back show, Alvin Kamara, and his price point, it keeps rising pick by pick, I swear, every day. Right now he's averaged at the 14th overall pick, so second pick of the second round. A couple weeks ago I was getting him at the end of the second, which was amazing, but I truly think he can still be a top 5 running back. He has round 1 upside, so I'm still taking him early second round. I think he's a PPR monster. I do see the concerns about the no Drew Brees, but he didn't have Drew Brees last year, and he was still a top 5 running back when healthy. Missed 3 games and was still a top 10 running back. I know overall finishes are misleading and all that, but I still believe in the talent. He was 17 points per game last year in fantasy in full PPR. I do see the concerns about adding Olave and a healthy Michael Thomas back, so he may get less receptions. But I just think he's so good, and like you can't deny talent. If you have a talented guy like Kamara, you're gonna get him the ball, and especially in space where he thrives, and he thrives as a pass catcher. So I'm not worried. If the Saints are smart, they'll use him as one of their best weapons because I think he is their best weapon. So I wouldn't be surprised with another insane season from Kamara. What do you guys think about Kamara at his price point right now?
Yeah, I believe at the running back show, we weren't so sure about his whole situation, but now it seems a little more clear that it's unlikely he'll be suspended. So now I do like Kamara. Yeah, top of the second round. I think he's a pretty good pick there.
Yeah, I liked his ADP a lot better just a couple weeks ago. Before whoever tweeted, I don't know if it's Schefter or Rapport or whoever it was, that he's probably not going to get suspended this season. But yeah, if he plays 17 games, he's probably going to be a top 5 running back, and he's being drafted, outside of that. So I'm very happy with him in the second round. The one thing is you have that anvil hanging over your head of it. Everyone's talking about 6 games as the suspension.
Mm-hmm.
And if that happens, if a video is released of the incident, there's public backlash, how the NFL will be quick. Goodell is going to be really quick to just, put his fist down. And that's the one thing. If that happens in week 10 or week 11, you're toast.
Yeah. If that's the only thing that can derail this season, whether it be injury or a suspension in season or going on the commissioner exempt list. That's the only thing I'm a little worried of with Kamara, because I think his talent is undeniable, and it's kind of just a risk you got to run with. I look at it like almost like an injury. It's you can't really predict what's going to happen. None of us know. Only the lawyers know, and I feel like, I don't know much about courtroom stuff, but I feel like if they had the evidence, it would come out by now. But
he's going to get injured, and then he's going to call somebody and be like, drop the video. And then he'll be like, oh, I'm out 6 weeks. So I hope I recover.
Yeah. So our second player, Jake, who is your second player that you love at their price point right now?
For me, it's Christian Kirk. He's actually going outside the top 100. And he's one of the last guys that you can pick, and you can say, this is the surefire number 1 target getter in this offense. He's the number 1 target in this offense. And say you want what you want about Laviska Shenault, but he had 100 targets last year. That's, they're going to have around 260 vacated targets in Jacksonville. And the bulk of those, I think, are going to go to Christian Kirk. I was looking at Doug Peterson, the new coach. Obviously, you guys from Philly are familiar with him. So you look at the top target in teams coached by Doug Peterson, they average about 8.3 targets a game. And over this 17-game season, that's going to be 141 targets. So if you give that to Kirk last year, he comes out with 106 catches for around 1,300 yards and 7 touchdowns. I don't know if Jacksonville's offense is going to be that good to give him 7 touchdowns, but that stat line would have made him the wide receiver 8 last year, just behind Stephon Diggs. Now, I don't think he's going to finish wide receiver 8, but I do think in PPR especially, wide receiver 1 finishing in the top 12 is not out of the question for him, and you're getting him outside of the top 100. And the other thing with Kirk is you have Trevor Lawrence there. And if he takes that next step in his second year, who's going to be the biggest beneficiary? It's going to be everybody, obviously. But most of all, it's going to be Christian Kirk. And honestly, the Jaguars, I know they're not going to be a great team this season, but I think that they are all values at their ADP, honestly. You look at ETN, I like him. Love Kirk. And then let's not forget about Marvin Jones, who's basically free. Evan Ingram, I think, could be sneaky. He's going to be startable certain weeks. So, my pick here is Christian Kirk, but honestly, maybe all of the Jaguars.
Yeah, I love Christian Kirk. I have him in a couple leagues. I love getting him late. I feel like he does have – I think he will be a strong wide receiver too. I don't think a wide receiver 1 outcome is out of the cards. I think it's possible. I think it's more likely he's a strong wide receiver too, or great flex. Right now you're drafting him as a depth piece. like maybe your wide receiver 4 or 5, depending on how you draft. And he has the upside to be a starter or a great trade piece if you need a running back help or something. But I truly think he's going to have a fantastic season. I have him statted out at like 90, 95 catches for just about or just under 1,000 yards and maybe 6 touchdowns. So, I mean, that's a pretty solid receiver right there. But yeah, I love Christian Kirk. I'm really thinking Trevor Lawrence takes that next step, and Kirk is by far the best guy there. I think Marvin Jones is a touchdown guy, and Marvin Jones was fantasy relevant last year. I think Kirk is that down the field guy. He'll get them into the red zone, and then I feel like they'll go with the bigger bodies like a Marvin Jones in the red zone. But I do love Christian Kirk. I'm glad you put him on your list. Jeremy, what do you think about Christian Kirk?
Yeah, I've warmed up to him. I don't know why I didn't love him at first, but yeah, I do really like Christian Kirk now. Yeah, like you guys said, number 1 in the offense. He played pretty well in Arizona last year. And yeah, they're going to be losing a lot of games. I'd imagine he'll throw a pretty good amount, and he should get a good amount of targets.
Yeah, awesome. Jeremy, who's your second player that you love at their?
So my first guy was Allen Robinson, and my second guy is a guy who gets drafted probably just right above him is Cortland Sutton. Gets maybe the best quarterback upgrade of anyone. I just think he's so good. I think he's straight out just better than Jerry Jeudy, and I think he'll prove that this year. Just a big body, and he's gonna show the world what he is. I think he could be a top 10 receiver this year.
Yeah, that's not out of the outcomes. I think there's a lot of similarities between the Jeudy and Sutton, and it was so similar to last year with Kupp and Robert Woods getting Matthew Stafford as their quarterback. So they're both going around the exact same spot, Sutton and Jeudy. It's kind of just who's going to be the guy. And I sincerely think they're both going to be fantastic. I mean, Russell Wilson has a track record of supporting 2 wide receivers like Metcalf and Lockett, and they are. And Sutton fills that Metcalf role. He's got the same body, same skill set as Metcalf. So I really like Sutton this year, and I think like you said, he can be a top 10 wide receiver. What do you think, Jake?
I don't think he's quite DK Metcalf, but I think he's the best receiver on that team, and I think he will be Russell Wilson's number 1 target. So I think it's a good call. Actually, I had him on my list, and I was like, yeah, no, I was trying to go. Let's try to go a little bit deeper. So but he is a guy that I really liked. And I still do. I think he's absolutely could finish as a wide receiver 1. I honestly kind of expect it.
Yeah. Awesome. My second player that I love at their ADP, I have him in 6 leagues already. So my season's really riding on this guy, and that's Leonard Fournette for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think he's a fantastic piece. He's going to be one of the healthy options in a Tom Brady-led offense. Chris Godwin's out right now. Antonio Brown's gone. They draft Rachaad White, which is a little concerning, but I think Leonard Fournette is trusted by Brady, so he's going to be out there. If Rachaad White makes a mistake, Brady's going to do that thing where he points to the sideline and just like go to your room to Rachaad White, and Rachaad White doesn't touch the field. And Brady trusts Fournette, and Fournette's going to just finish as that safe top 10 running back. Will get you 17 points a game in PPR, and then he'll get those rushing touchdowns. He's just a safe player, I think, and getting him in the 3rd round is a value play for me. Getting an RB1, a locked and loaded, guaranteed snaps. The only thing is the injury bug, and everyone plays against that. Just get Rachaad White as a handcuff. And I think Leonard Fournette is great pick at his ADP. What do you think about Fournette this year, Jeremy?
I like him at his ADP. I wouldn't put him under one of my guy type of things, but I do like him at his ADP, and I think he'll be a pretty consistent and dependable running back.
Jake, what do you think about Fournette?
He's someone that maybe I have going a little bit later than ADP, but I do think as long as he's healthy, he's going to be very good. The interior of that line has kind of been decimated by injuries. That's a concern. The weight gain, I don't know if you want to be concerned about that. I'm not too worried. That's not one of the reasons I'm fading him, but he does have that chemistry with Brady and has potential to catch a lot of balls. So I'm excited that, especially for PPR, that does get me excited. I am a little worried about Rachaad White because I'm a big believer in Rachaad White. So I like what you said about handcuffing him. I think that's smart because Fournette's older. He's had a lot of touches. If you look at just back even to his college days, he's has a history of injuries. So make sure you get Rachaad White. Maybe reach a little bit on him.
Yeah, I look at it as almost it's very similar to me, like Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. I feel like there's a clear-cut handcuff to have in this situation. Dalvin
Yes.
Cook. So it's if you take Rachaad White, if you take Leonard Fournette, take Rachaad White round 12 or round 11 if you know there's someone big on Rachaad White. But if you take both of them, I feel like you're guaranteed RB1 production for the entire season. God willing, they both stay healthy and they both don't go down with an injury. Then it'll just be a mess. But I think Fournette's one of the safer plays this season, as I don't really see him busting. I don't see a timeshare there unless Rachaad White comes out and is a fantastic like RB1 in the draft type player. But yeah, I think Fournette is a very, very safe pick and great value at his ADP. All right. Do we all go through two already?
Mm-hmm.
Two? All right. Jake, who is your third player that you love at their ADP and is going to win people championships?
All right. This is the guy that I think is going to be a league winner. I think I love him at ADP. I've drafted 2 home league drafts so far. I have him in both. He's one of my higher exposures in underdog. So it's AJ Dillon. Let's start with the talent. He's just a really incredible player, just in terms of athleticism, and what he showed last year in catching the ball was kind of a surprise. He did coming out of Boston College. No one really thought that, man, can he catch passes? But he had 34 receptions last season. Think about the vacated targets in that offense. You could see that number getting up to 40, 45 receptions, and the ceiling just increases. You look at Green Bay's offensive line, one of the best in the league. PFF have them ranked as the 5th best. He had over 1,100 yards from scrimmage as a backup last year. He's basically had as many yards as James Conner, but he had 20 fewer touches. And that's kind of another thing to think about is that even with Aaron Jones not missing many games, he still produced. And that's kind of where he's going. I think he finished as RB23, and he's going right around that range. Let me see. Right now, he's going with RB23, right, at 52 overall. So that'd be early 5th round. And so I love him there. And then let's also look at what LaFleur had to say about him. He called him a premier back. He said that AJ Dillon is just scratching the surface. And then about the situation, he says we've got 2 number 1 backs. He said they're 1A and 1A just recently. That doesn't make sense, but he coaches the Packers. What can you expect from the guy? But one of the biggest reasons I'm in on him is the departure of Devontae Adams, and he was their red zone weapon. For as long as he's been there, really, at least after the first 2 couple rough years, he's been amazing in the red zone. And now that he's gone, who are they going to turn to? Why not the 250-pound sledgehammer, right? This guy, he has 6 of his 7 total rushing touchdowns have come inside the 10-yard line. So, it's not like he's produced a ton of touchdowns yet, but I think that could be in store. And who are you going to give the ball to? Aaron Jones, who's, a smaller back, or this your big guy. And then the obvious upside, if Aaron Jones goes down, we're not rooting for any injury here, but Jones is going to be 28 this season. He turns 28 in December. He's a smaller back. He has over 1,000 touches in his NFL career. Something could happen, right? And if that happens, AJ Dillon's a top 5 back, and you're drafting him in the 5th round. So I love the potential there, and he's a guy that I think you're getting at value with a lot of built-in upside if things break right in terms of touchdowns or if Jones gets injured and he's the guy.
Yeah, for sure. I really am kind of warming up to AJ Dillon. At first, I was like, no, not happening. But it really just makes a lot of sense. And with all the reports coming out of camp, one thing I saw that you didn't say was I know Rodgers, I mean, he is the quarterback, so he's going to gas up his players at any time he can. But he was saying he wouldn't be surprised if both Jones and Dillon get 50 receptions each, which is like if that's 100 receptions to the running back position. Any other team, I would be like, yeah, no. But I mean, they don't really have anyone to throw to. I mean, they have Lazard is the most trusted receiver there, and Lazard is not a wide receiver one for most teams. The only thing is Tunyon is coming back. I feel like Tunyon will get some touchdowns.
For sure.
He scored double-digit touchdowns when he was healthy. ACL injury, I believe it was. So if with him back in the fold, but Devontae leaving, I feel like he'll probably get more red zone touches for Dillon. So I wouldn't be surprised if Dillon gets 10, 11, 12 rushing touchdowns, just about 1,000 yards on the ground. And then I wouldn't be surprised if he catches 40 balls this year and gets a couple through the air. I think he is a great pick at where he's going. The only thing is I like guys around him better. I like the receivers there better. And I tend to always get the running backs earlier, and I need receivers at this point. So I don't have a lot of shares, but I do like A.J. Dillon this season.
He's more compatible with those 0 RB or hero RB builds. Yeah, because if you do go running back early, then you're probably looking for wide receiver where he's going.
Yeah, for sure. Jeremy, what are you thinking about Green Bay running backs this year?
I'm so iffy on AJ Dillon. I like him, but it's like I only like him if you draft well. Because if the way you're or at the point where you're drafting him, he's a flex guy for you. Unless he's an RB, depending on how you draft. But he's a starter for you. And I just don't trust him as an every week starter as long as Aaron Jones is healthy and playing. If he's hurt, he's an RB1. I think we could probably all agree on that. But I can't quite trust him every single week. So I love the pick if you draft well and can fit him in. Like if he's your RB3, I love it. If he's your RB2, I don't love it quite as much. If you draft him, I say draft running backs early so you have the depth, and then you can play the receivers if they have good matchups, however it is. But yeah, if Aaron Jones gets hurt, he's probably a league winner.
Yeah, for sure. He's like in that area that Kareem Hunt has been in the past couple of years, where it's like if Nick Chubb goes down, Kareem Hunt's going to be a top 5 running back every week, and I feel the same way about Dillon, and it's like Madison too. He's just one of the most elite handcuffs, and he can still be a flex play, which is crazy, which is a very valuable play, and I think he's a league winner if everything goes right.
I want to push back a little bit just about, even if he doesn't get the feature role, if Jones is healthy for 17 games, he averaged nearly 13 touches per game when Aaron Jones played last season. So you're still getting some volume, and he had more red zone touches than Aaron Jones did last season. So you're also getting these high value. Those 13 touches are probably going to be high value touches. It's probably going to be close to the end zone. So I understand the trepidation with the fact that Aaron Jones is going in the first 2 rounds, and he's also in that same backfield. But I think there is still value with Dillon at his cost.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's very rare that you like 2 running backs on the same team for fantasy purposes, but I think this is one of those rare cases where you can get away with. I mean, obviously you're going to start Aaron Jones. I wouldn't be surprised if he has 60, maybe even 70 receptions this year. So you're going to start him, and I wouldn't hate starting AJ Dillon. Like Jeremy said, I wouldn't really like him as your RB2. But a lot of people are going to use him as, like you said, Jake, that 0 or hero RB build. And if things go right, I think, and like it's not out of the realm of possibility that AJ Dillon takes over the starting role, because I mean I wouldn't be surprised. He's a lot younger than Jones. Jones is more likely to get banged up. Say like he doesn't get hurt for a while, like something nagging. I wouldn't be surprised if Dylan, that big bruising back who has shown the ability to catch balls, becomes that 3-down back by the end of the season. That wouldn't be out. That it wouldn't surprise me at the end of the year if he just shows that he's just better. Who's next? I kind of forgot where we're at. Is it Jeremy? Who's your third player that's going to win people championships?
I don't know about win a championship. I'll put it that way. I put a guy who's literally practically free in all drafts. He's probably honestly not owned in most drafts. That's Isaiah McKenzie. So he'll likely be the starting slot receiver week 1 for the Buffalo Bills. He hasn't really done much throughout his career so far, but we see Cole Beasley last year. I mean, you could play Cole Beasley in your receiver slot and feel very confident. He's going to get 7-8 catches, and he's going to fill that exact role. Bills offense going to be one of the best offenses in the league easily. And, for dirt cheap, literally nothing, I think it's very well worth the risk.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't have to go too deep into it. But
yeah, Isaiah McKenzie, he may not win you your redraft league, but, I mean, he could win you some best ball leagues. He could win you some of those deeper leagues. I know if you are on TikTok, that Walter Picks 32-man league. If you're in one of those, he's a great pick. But yeah, I like Isaiah McKenzie. I think he's going to win that slot job over Jamison Crowder. And if he doesn't, he's free. You can just drop him and probably pick up Crowder because he's probably free too. So
take them both. Last 2 picks here.
Yeah, exactly. Low risk, pretty good upside. So it just makes sense. And Josh Allen has showed that role makes that role has some value, and I don't believe this will happen. But if Gabe Davis isn't as good as what he's hyped up to be, which I doubt because he's already a Hall of Famer, he's so good. But McKenzie could have even more value. Could be the wide receiver 2 in that offense, which would be crazy. It's not out of the realm of possibility, and for him being free, I think it's a no-brainer. If you have a spot, just pick him up. It's pretty simple. Jake, what do you think about Isaiah McKenzie?
It's very likely that one of those 2 guys is going to be Cole Beasley this year. Where he's going, it's a very good offense. And I think Gabe Davis is being a little overdrafted. I'm a huge Gabe Davis fan. I've had him in Dynasty for a couple of years on a couple rosters. And I want to see the breakout, right? I'd love for him to return value at his ADP, even though I'm not drafting him. But yeah, I think there's value in this Buffalo offense, and in a PPR league, I think Isaiah McKenzie could be a league winner. He could be a wide receiver 3 pretty easily, and I think he could maybe even sniff wide receiver 2 territory if Gabe Davis disappoints. So I like it. I love the call. It's deep cut, but I like it.
Yeah, for sure. I like it. And I'm very happy to say that I have added Isaiah McKenzie a couple months ago in Dynasty just as a stash, and it's paying off big time.
He had 2 really big games when they actually played him too. It's like it's not like he hasn't flashed. So I get being in on it, and he's free.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, got him in drafts.
Yeah, I saw you picked him up in our home league. Yeah.
Yep.
To round it out, my last player that will get you paid will be Juju Smith-Schuster from the Kansas City Chiefs. I feel like he's in the perfect situation. You couldn't ask for a better situation. They're one of the teams with the most vacated targets. I can't remember. Were they the most vacated targets, or were the Packers? I can't remember.
The Chiefs were, I think, last I checked.
Yeah.
I don't know after all these cuts and whatnot. That might have. But yeah, they're in the top 5, top 3, I think.
Vacated targets, and Juju is a target machine. This is in PPR. If you're taking Juju, he's going late 6th, early 7th. But in some of those leagues, you can see him go as early as 5th round if people really love him. I don't hate that pick. I have him statted out to be a late 4th round pick. Like, I feel like that's where he's going to live up to his value. Juju is going to be he's the best receiver in Kansas City right now. I think Travis Kelce will have a little bit more receptions, but after Kelce, Juju's the next best guy there in Kansas City to throw the ball to. And I wouldn't be surprised if he has 100 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns. I think a wide receiver 1 outcome is not out of the possibilities because he has Patrick Mahomes throwing him the ball. He's used to Ben Roethlisberger, and Ben Roethlisberger was great earlier in Juju's career as Juju flashed for a wide receiver one finish. So he's shown that he can do it. And with an even better quarterback, even better situation, I don't see why he can't do it again. And he's still young. He's 25 years old. So he's in the best situation of his career. I think it's just all the stars align on Juju this year. And I think him going in the 6th round or 7th round, wherever you can get him, is amazing value. If you have he's just awesome. I love Juju this year. What do you guys think on Juju? Jake?
Jake, you go.
So, yeah, I like Juju Smith-Schuster at his ADP. It's huge upside, like you mentioned, with the Chiefs, all those vacated targets from Tyreek Hill. So I really like it. I like it's a good call. And again, PPR leagues. The only thing is the little injury and the injury history, little worrying. Sky Moore is something to look out for. Obviously, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is going to get those down the field targets, but I think he'll own the middle of the field with Kelsey. But Kelsey's probably going to get more of that attention from defensive backs and linebackers. So I think that'll free up Juju, and it's a good call.
Awesome. Jeremy, what do you think about Juju?
Yeah, I really like Juju as well. I feel like he's a very popular pick that a lot of people like. His ADP is pretty solid. You're not taking a huge risk on him. He's like a top 3 pick. Now, if you can get him as a flex, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you do have to go a little earlier with Juju and a lot because of that offense. And he does, like you said, he's a popular pick where people are willing to reach.
Yeah, if you get him in the 5th round.
Yeah. Yeah, I forget. I think I took him in 5th round in one league, and I'm not looking back one bit. And I think right now I have him statted out as to be my wide receiver 20, but that's me being low on him. I think can easily be a top 14 receiver, maybe even top 10. It's not out of the range of outcomes. So these are all great players that we talked about, and some really bad players that made us sick. Anything else you guys want to say to finish it up?
I don't think these guys are bad. It's just their ADP, right? I hate the ADP, not the player. So.
ADP. It all comes down to price point.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thing. Like the one thing I keep telling myself, I'll look at a guy at his ADP. Like for example, a Josh Allen. I don't want him on my team to draft. But come in the middle of the season, I wouldn't mind trading for a Josh Allen. I wouldn't mind trading for a Nick Chubb. When I say we don't like these players, it's more of I don't like drafting them where they're going. I like more guys. It's not that I don't like players. I like other guys there. That's the main thing. And getting these guys in the middle of the season, whether it be trade or something, it's not out of the range of possibilities. So, yeah, that's what we mean by players that make us sick, and they don't really give us COVID. But anything else? That's all for me. I'm kind of just at that point where I'm just rambling about nothing.
Hope y'all feel better.
Yeah, I mean, I feel great. I feel good.
He's the one that gave it to me.
Yeah. Oh well.
Feel better, fellas.
Yeah, this has been episode 5. It's been me, Steven, and you can find me on Twitter at sbrownholtz1, Jake at DinoDinologue, and Jeremy at Skull Cards on Instagram. Well, awesome. Have a good week, fellas.
Adios.